Hello, friends, and welcome to my talking head. Today's topic is about the first noble truth, which we'll get to. So, what's going wrong in your life? Let me tell you about mine. First of all, welcome to Croatia. I'm at my girlfriend's childhood home. I'm in her room right now. When I get boring, you can check out the stuff behind me. This is her son, Patrick, when he was very, very young. He's almost a foot taller than me right now. This is her brother, Ivan. This is Antonia, my lovely girlfriend when she was like 17. So next Tuesday, I'm flying with Antonia back to Wisconsin, where I was born and raised. I haven't been I haven't been to America we're pushing, it's almost 2 years now. So a lot has changed since I left. My parents, for one thing, after 53 years of marriage, like just signed their divorce papers. So I'm essentially flying home to two separate homes. I mean, I'm flying home to a divided house. Um, One thing I was thinking about today, though, is that it's not just my home that's divided. I'm not just coming home to a divided home on the personal front. I'm coming home to a divided country, okay? Like, I miss America living in Europe, so I follow the news, okay? And I was talking to an American friend of mine about this the other day. Like, is it really that confrontational and binary and polarized in America? I mean, on the one hand, you have the anti vax and anti mask idiots who basically can't see the tiny little Russian flag at the bottom of the Facebook posts that they mistake for scientific articles. But that's not how they see themselves, okay? They see themselves as having been effed with and lied to and intimidated by and condescended to and misled for day after month after year by an establishment media, by a greedy coastal elites that sold out the American industry when we got NAFTA and we sent all the jobs abroad. I mean, you go to my hometown in Wisconsin, you don't want to know what else I'm coming home to? Empty factories that have been turned into hipster bars or little like startup tech companies. You get all this middle class that used to be the middle class that has no voice now. Oftentimes they have no job, they have no health care. Okay, so they don't see themselves as complete and total idiots. They're angry. So that's on the right. Okay, on the left you have hypersensitive, virtue signaling, purple haired socialist snobs who are evidence of and manifesting the total decline of Western civilization, one pronoun change at a time. Okay, but that's not how they see themselves. They see themselves as living in a country with a foundation of racism, classism, corporatism, trans and homophobia, sexism, okay? And this has led to a country that is rotten, rotten deep down, okay? And they're the root canal, okay? Because you can't leave the rotten tooth. So who's right? Who's wrong? I mean, I go back and forth. Sometimes I read the Daily Mail and the Daily Caller and the New American Conservative, and I think, well, at least somebody's keeping those liberals in check. And other days I'm like on the Jacobin and the New York Times and the Guardian, and I'm like, oh, God, thank God somebody's expressing my point of view. You know, I'm divided too, okay? Growing up in my family, we had a shared purpose, okay? We were good Catholic people, unlike those bad communists that I was always hearing about growing up in Reagan's 80s, okay? But that story isn't true. In the same way, the America that I grew up in had a shared purpose, okay? It was a country of good Christian people who were free thinking and participated in a free market and were an antidote to fascism and communism and tyranny around the world, okay? But that story is no longer true, and it's no longer the meta-narrative that unites America. That story is So what now? Which brings us to a news story. It's a story that you've probably heard. It's a famous Buddhist story about a woman named Kisa Gotami, if I'm pronouncing that right. So Kisa Gotami is grief stricken. She is volcanic with mourning because her only son, her young baby boy, has died. Okay? She starts to lose her mind, and a wise old man says, you need to go see this guy preaching at the edge of the outskirts of town. His name is the Buddha. So, having no other options, she decides to get religion and goes to see the Buddha. The Buddha says, oh, Kisa, good news. I have the powers of resurrection. I can bring your baby boy back to life. Okay? And instantly, Kisa Gotami's entire attitude changes. She connects to the Buddha. Okay? She's listening. She could hear a pin drop on the other side of the universe right now. She's so tuned in to what he's saying. So she's come out of herself and she's listening. And the Buddha says, okay, here's the deal. In order for me to resurrect your son, I need you to go into town. And here's a paper bag. Go into town. Start knocking on doors. I need you to find families that have not been touched by grief, that have not been touched by depths of sorrow, that have not been touched by death. Okay? You need to find a home or homes where people have not experienced death and get little yellow mustard seeds from those homes and put them in this bag. Okay? So Kisa Gotami is like overjoyed and she runs into town with her bag looking for a house that has not been touched by death. She knocks on the first door. So a guy answers, and she asks him, is this a household that has never been touched by death? And the guy says, oh, let me tell you all about it. My mother died last month, and my cat is dead, and I had a lizard when I was a kid who died, and I never really got over about it. Come on in, Then she goes to the next house. The guy says, oh, funny you should ask. I've got a body out back. Here's a Guinness. You can pour it out for him. We're doing a wake. So she goes from house to house to house to house, okay? She stays overnight in some houses. She sleeps on the road at other times. She's visiting everybody in the village, and she starts receiving stories, okay? She starts hearing everybody's stories of grief and stories of pain, and she receives their grief, and she holds it next to her own, and she cries with them, and she laughs at the stories of the deceased with them. She starts forgetting about her own grief, about her own child. It begins to be absorbed in this greater understanding of the human condition, or the first noble truth. Life has suffering. I mean, I've thought about this a lot lately. It was a tough year. We just went through a really, really tough year together. We had quarantines, okay, that gutted the economy, gutted people's mental health, okay, led to divorces, like in my house, led to deep-seated problems in relationships and families exploding to the surface. I mean, I'm in Varaždin, which is a small city in Croatia. I just talked to Antonia's dad last night. He's a doctor. He told me about how he has a good friend with a daughter. The daughter's 34 years old. She just gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and then she got COVID. And this woman came this close to dying. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't even be on a ventilator. They had to take blood out of her body, oxygenate it, and put the blood back into her body. Okay? Meanwhile, her sister-in-law is a extremely committed anti-vaxxer. So, that's kind of a metaphor for the world we're living in right now. Near death on the one hand, really strong ideas about how to deal with the pandemic on the other hand. But we're all united in our suffering. I guess as I think about going home and sitting with my mom and my dad, sitting in the grief of our broken home, our divided house, the grief of our pandemic year, everything that everybody has gone through, sitting with my parents in all of that. Okay, I think of Kisa Gotami. I think of her listening and absorbing and growing and changing with each story about grief and the death that she hears. And I imagine her overflowing with these stories at some point and realizing that her grief is shared with everybody around her. It's shared with everybody who was, everybody who will be. There's a great quote associated with Kisa Gotami's story that is, the living are few, but the dead are many. Okay, we're in a long chain of human beings, whether left or right, mom or dad, this or that, have all shared one human condition of suffering. And so we have one shared purpose, I believe, I feel, I try and practice, and it's the shared purpose that is explicitly stated at the core of Buddhism. Enough suffering. My mentor used to tell me, if you're suffering, you're doing something wrong. Doesn't matter if you have the right idea about your parents' divorce and now you're going to yell at dad for getting a girlfriend, or you're going to yell at mom for being super angry. Whatever it is, man, if you're suffering, you're fucking wrong, okay? I'm going to look at myself in the mirror when I go to both of my parents' homes. I'm going to tell them that. And maybe then, like Kisa Gotami, I'll sit and I'll listen to their stories of grief and separation, and I'll share my story with them, and maybe there'll be a connection and something new can be born beyond the old bullshit stories about the happy, holy Catholic family. Hey there, you! Okay, so I finished this video yesterday. I was done with it. I edited it, shaved my head, took a shower, went to my girlfriend's parents' summer house. We played with Una. Una.
Aren't you rooting for me?
I came home, went to bed, woke up, and I realized that this video was maybe suffering from a murky conclusion. So in case I wasn't perfectly clear, here is what I'm trying to say. Do suffering properly is the first noble truth. There's suffering on this planet. There's the second, third, and fourth noble truths, which maybe I'll get to at another date. Those are the four noble truths in Buddhism. My mentor once summed up the four noble truths with 4 words. And that's the conclusion of this video. And those 4 words are: just kidding. Turn suffering into love. So, thank you, friends. I got a lot of new people that seem to have subscribed to this channel. I think Brad Warner mentioned me in one of his videos, which is great. It's like, it was so exciting to see all these people. I've been going and clicking and 185, 190, 192. So thank you so much. I have a link to my Patreon page where I've got essays up and different thoughts and stuff. So if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, please visit that page. There's a link in the description below.